Hey there, Fellowship family. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all things church life. My name is Mark Francis, and I am once again your host for today. And I have with me the lovely Santmiers couple, and it is Karen and Scott. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing well.
Good. So we've been engaged in this conversation over the last couple of episodes of staff changes. And people might be thinking, well, why are the Santmiers here? What is going on with them? We'll get to that. Well, we had the McNutts on 2 weeks ago, and then the Pearsons talking about Shenandoah County and talking about youth ministry. And I just want to hear from you guys. First of all, just tell us your roles here. And Karen, we're going to be spotlighting you a little bit more today. We've had each of you guys on separately on this podcast, but not together.
True.
So this is cool. I like it. So we can bat around some family stories, and I want to hear the details of the Santmiers clan.
Wow.
So Scott, give us your role here at FBC.
So I'm the pastor of local outreach. Been on staff for a couple of decades, literally. And I've been in this role of local outreach for the last 8 years.
Neat.
So that involves kind of the outward push of FBC, of how we're out in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's
And for our body, we're engaged in this Roman series, and there's a lot of current topics of just reaching out and loving one another and caring for one another. And this series has been really cool for your
I've
role.
said if we would think seriously and be serious about loving others as Christ loved us, then I'd be out of a job. I wouldn't have to remind people of loving their neighbors and their coworkers and their friends that they live, work, and play with. Then my job would be over.
And that's okay. I mean, job security is good, and for
I'd
some
love
people,
to work
for you,
myself
not
out
so
of
much.
that job.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be fantastic.
We'll get there eventually.
He's not the transition we're talking about.
Karen. So what's your role at FBC?
I am children's worship coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah, which encompasses kids on worship and what we do. And as far as in the spring, we just had a musical, but it also encompasses worship on Sunday mornings and just helping kids see what it looks like to worship.
Yeah. And we are going to, like I said, spotlight you a little bit. And I want to get a chance to, just before we get into the changes that are happening for you guys, but where's your passion? What drives you to serve with children?
I love seeing children worship the Lord. There's this unabandonment. There's this, they just kind of let loose and are free to, and they follow us a bit too. There's a teachability there, the moldability that we can be a part of shaping those beginning moments of worship and pointing them to that Jesus loves them, of course, most importantly, but then that he loves our worship and he loves our adoration and that it looks like a blown kiss to him when we worship him.
And kids are so innocent. They're sponges.
Yeah. And I've kind of transitioned my role a bit in the past years to, yes, I've still led in worship at our rehearsals, but to having teens doing that. And I've just really enjoyed kind of working with teens and helping them to find their gifts in worship and leading.
I like that concept because I know that there's this Kids Zone worship ministry, essentially, that you call it Kids Zone, and it's teens leading kids and kids leading other kids. Where did that come from? Because that's very biblical, I think, of kind of just discipleship happening within the body, but it's happening within children's ministry, within youth ministry.
Right.
Walk us through what goes on a Sunday morning down there.
So I was trying to think when we started Kids Zone Worship, our second son, Nick, would have been in high school. And I actually had taken a break, a sabbatical, and just trying to figure out where we were going with worship. At the time, we had a kids choir ministry and we had worship on Sunday mornings where adults were leading. And just was praying about where God had for us, what he had for us in the ministry and for me, and came in touch with a church that we have friends with in Lancaster Bible Church, Lancaster County Bible Church.
LCBC.
Yeah, it's now called LCBC, Lives Changed by Christ. But we took our, when I came back from the break, we took our teens and adults up there and we watched how they led worship for kids. And it was adults mentoring teens and teens mentoring children. And then children who wore their shirt that day got to be a part of leading as well. And I just loved the concept. My whole team did. And we jumped in,
That's
bright
neat.
orange shirts and all, and we've been Orange Kids Zone Worship ever since.
And if you've been around FBC for any numerous years, you kind of look forward to those orange shirt mornings when the stage is full of kids and worshiping kids and teens and adults, and it just brings a different energy, I think, to the building, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
So, Scott, talk to me. We'll change a little pace here. Talking about your own family. I mean, you have children, and they're grown now. Did you see this passion from Karen overflow into your family?
Sure. And it's been something that has kind of filtered through our family life probably since the very beginnings. There's always been opportunities for us to be a part of worship, whether that be adult worship at other churches or kids worship here. And then our own kids where, Zach, our oldest, he went on to not just love worship, but to study worship and to get a degree in worship ministries. And he still leads worship at the church that he's at now in Michigan. So there's, that continues on. And then there are elements of it in all of our other kids as well, because they were a part of Kids Zone for some of them who actually helped lead worship. And so it's always been something that's there, and Karen has always been the driver behind that and the passion in that, and she's done a great job of welding not just family worship but corporate worship together. So
it reminds me of just the 4 Ps that the elders have kind of launched last year with the 40th anniversary of that. There's this passing the torch, that what you guys are doing is working with children. In children's ministry, by the way, we had like a rally to have kind of people get involved and serve and participate. And that rally, I think, was centered around how do we pass the torch to the next generation? How do we impact the next generation? And it starts in the home, which it sounds like you guys have done, but then being able to work with kids in a church environment to show them worship and to teach them the skills of what that looks like. I find that it's exciting. My kids went through it too.
Yeah.
So, I'm able to see the growth and the process out of that. Walk me through kind of their last couple of years. And you've been doing this for how long, Karen?
26. Started as a volunteer when Nick was just a baby. When we first came, a year after we came, got plugged in. And then on staff for 21 years.
Wow. So it involves a longevity.
Yeah, it does.
Working with kids.
Yeah.
And what has God been teaching you over these last couple of years? Because it sounds like there's some changes brewing in the ministry with you guys as being a part of that.
Yeah. All along, I've always been someone who likes to have a team with me. And so I've always been someone who had someone who specialized in, like when we're doing musicals, drama or dance or, those kind of things. And even I was telling Scott a story yesterday in the old building when what is now the admin bullpen was where we met for our choir rehearsals. And I had papers flying. I was not very organized as a young woman, and still not sometimes probably, but papers flying. And this dear lady, Chris Brown, comes alongside me and just starts gathering them up and puts a hole punch in them and puts them in a notebook and said, here, and she always was doing things like that for me. And just having people surrounding me what are not my gifts and helping that we can all kind of work together and pull together. So in the past couple of years, what I've been seeing is that I have a really strong team surrounding me, and I would be out a week for whatever reason, and they were fine. Life would go on. They'd say, rehearsal went well. We missed you, but rehearsal went well. And I was like, you didn't miss me. It was fine. But and something else that in serving, yes, it was a job, but in the serving aspect with these people, they became my friends. Yeah. And so as I look back, every, group, those are my core friend groups, which has been very meaningful. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. And I love how you basically are building up a team of people to do the work of the ministry and get into a place where, not that you're out of a job, but that the job continues and the torch is being passed and the leadership and the development of that. It's a picture of, again, what I think a strong church looks like.
Yeah.
That's not just dependent on one person to be there and do the job.
Yeah.
So, Scott, what have you been gleaning over these last couple of years to build up to a potential change for Karen in her role? Like, how have you seen not just the ministry, but life at home develop to where there's going to be a next phase and a next chapter for you guys as a family?
Yeah. I'm not sure, COVID was a piece of that, of course, because not only was Karen doing the children's music here, she was teaching music at the Shandor Arts Academy, and that just came to an abrupt halt all at one time. So that freed up some of her time to think through, okay, what are my next steps? I think our phrase was, "What are you going to be when you grow up?"
Yeah,
it was.
Exactly.
So that just began the thinking process of what was next, and knowing that Kids Zone worship was not just well staffed, but well led already. That there wasn't a concern that it would just come to a complete and utter halt. That was even almost taken off the table, as it wasn't even a concern, because there were so many good leaders and so many good teens and younger kids coming along that were really, that discipleship process was happening, and it was becoming an automatic piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So with all this buildup, so Karen, share with us kind of what the next step is for your life.
So I guess I'll back just a second. So in the fall, then I made the decision. I made the decision I was going to start another job. And we researched, and actually our daughter found what seemed to be the perfect job for me. And that's an activities assistant at a local assisted living. And I started that the end of October. And I have just really enjoyed the piece of being in the world and being able to impact people who I would never have met before. A whole new generation of people, but in many ways, some of the similar things that I do with children, I do with the older adults. And I really have loved that. And so I was doing both things together. It made up almost full time. And I've never worked full time except at the very beginning of our marriage. And doing that alongside ministry with Scott and alongside wanting to be this grandma extraordinaire and just everything, it's just hard to do it all. Yeah. And I kind of started getting this holy unrest probably the beginning of the year. And we just started talking about it. And our daughter at one point said, "You've made the decision. You just need to tell them." And it wasn't like I was at all unsatisfied. There was nothing ever that that I'm not unhappy, that there's just this peace that I am ready to say goodbye to this chapter of my life in leading kids in worship. And it's not without emotion, obviously, but it's definitely a very strong peace from the Lord. And
that's a great sign to know there's not tension. You're not wrestling with a decision.
Yeah. So no, I'm not going full time at Spring Arbor. I am staying part time. And just having more time to do things that I enjoy doing, like discipling a mentee who I've been still working with, and just being available for my family, for Scott in his ministry and just in life, and then for our kids and grandchildren, and just for whatever else God has for me.
That's great. Yeah. Well, we're excited for you.
Yeah.
And let's dive into more of what that looks like. And I'm fascinated because my wife, Eric, and I have always joked that children are more prone to gravitate to their grandparents, and the similarities of what they enjoy of older people and kids are very similar. Yeah. So how can you pass on your tools of what you've done over the last couple of decades here at FBC to the older generation?
Yeah. How can I?
Yeah. What are the plans? Because you're right. You're going into the world. It's not Bible time, not Bible lessons. So that passion and that energy for kids is now transferring to
Well, actually,
older
funny
adults.
story. I am doing a Bible study. I was asked by one of the residents. It's been now a month.
Yeah.
And I had been doing, hymn sings with them. And so they knew where I stood spiritually, kind of, I guess. And, I do painting and activities, and that's always fun because I don't paint. But, just fun crafts and things and bowling. But one of the residents said to me, would you consider doing a Bible study? I've never studied the Bible. And I was like, yeah, I would do that. But I needed to talk to my director, and I did, and she was fine with it. And so then I went home and I said, I'm fully out of comfort zone because, full disclosure, I love children. I've always worked with children. We've always led a small group, and I've always led the women's prayer time, but I'm not a Bible study leader. I've never seen myself as that, although Hanson Manova, when we were in India, said, Karen, you have to be ready in and out of season. And I told him that recently on a call, but that is the voice that came through my head again. And Scott said it too, but that God has put me there for such a time as this. And so I certainly couldn't say no. So we decided the book of John would be what I would do. And it certainly doesn't come without coming home with questions from what I hear. But what I found the first week was 8 people came the first week without, usually for activities, we have to go gather people. And there was no gathering needed. Like they were pushing their walkers, and they were in their wheelchairs, they were walking, however they were coming on their own. And there was an excitement. No one in the room had ever studied God's word.
Wow.
Ever. And I was like, okay, because I was really nervous going in thinking of older people. And then I was like, okay, well, this is going to be kind of like what I've done here, just on a different level. And God has just opened doors. It has been really a stretching experience for me, but it has been good.
That's cool.
And
more confirmation of that
just
this
more
is the place for you to be.
And then we end with prayer, and they're really, transparent. And then yesterday I had some new residents that came, and so it's Thursday mornings, and Dave Compton's actually going to come and do it once a month with me, or he's going to lead that once a month, which will be fabulous.
Which, quick connection there, Dave Compton is now a pastor of Congregational Care and involved with Seniors of Fellowship, but that was where he formerly worked.
Yes, he was the director there, the executive director. And so, so it's just neat to see how God is bringing. And all along, it was funny, I was telling Scott this morning, I said, my goal had always been to bring the two together, that I would bring Kids on Worship kids there. But there's nothing to say I can't, do that at some point. So it just won't be me bringing them. It'll be one of my wonderful leaders.
No, that's great. I love it. Well, let's walk back down memory lane real quick.
Yeah.
Talk to me, or just share a fun story or two that is just one of your favorite memories of being here at FBC. It could be funny. It could be serious. What do you remember back from the days of doing drama presentations, or orange shirts, or working with kids, or working with parents and families? What stands out to you the most?
There's so many stories. I in the old building, we would have to be up front. And I just remember, sound things you didn't have in the new, here in this building. Sometimes for shows, we would have someone backstage with a headset who could talk to the sound people. And I just remember times of turning around and, doing those kind of things with sound. And, I don't know. There's just so many different stories. I remember one, this lady is now a music teacher in the public schools, but she was a middle schooler, and this was years ago. And we were in the old building singing. And actually, it might have been one of the first years here in this building. And she and I were doing a duet during the offering. And she was nervous, and I had put a music stand up in front of us, and she said, we can have a music stand? And I said, oh, yes. You will note that I, too, get nervous, and I will always have music in front of me. I could know the song by memory, but if I don't have it there, I will absolutely go blank. And I'm pretty much like that to this day. I need, something in front of me. So I think that reassured her, and it helped her to see that even as an adult, I was human, that it was normal. Yeah. Of course, there's all the stories of kids we're in a choir moment, this really powerful song, and someone has to go to the bathroom, or, and they're coming up to you in the middle, and you're trying to focus and directing, and they're running off the stage, or, there's all those fun, different stories. But I'm just trying to think.
And Scott, I'll even turn to you too, because maybe from just a quick outside perspective, has you seen the children's ministry grow here in the church, and as you've seen Karen work, what have you seen the impact with families and those kids over these generations, essentially?
Yeah, And it's been good for me to be able to let go of the scenery production.
Yeah, the first musical, he built it all.
So it went from me doing all of
Yeah.
scenery to now I don't even have to think about scenery, which is just fantastic for me. Which is it just shows again how, people rise to the occasion, take on a role and run with it. And you don't have to prod them along. So that, from my perspective, I now get to, and have for the past number of years, get to be an audience participant, which has been a lot of fun to be able to do that, to be surprised at the production because it's my first time seeing it instead of 20 years ago where I knew exactly what was going to happen because I'd seen it so many times. So just that progression from that was
and
really good.
I'll speak into it too. I love just seeing the kids grow up in the church.
I do too.
From a perspective of being 2 years old or in nursery to then putting on an orange shirt to then participating with being a teenager, leading them to then even growing and progressing to being on stage with the big people band or singers. And that to me over the years, and I've known Zach also, and seeing Zach go through that process, your older son, to then have his heart of worship. To me, it speaks to what God does through you guys as parents, but then that overflow that into ministry of other families and other kids too. And then that permeates the rest of the church. And it leads to just a life of excitement of knowing that, okay, the kids love God and they are worshiping God with the parents. So there's that enjoyment that I've seen over the years of just seeing the kids get older.
Yeah.
It makes me feel old too.
Yeah.
That too.
I've always loved that kind of multi-generational, like when Zach was in middle school, we started Generations here on Wednesdays. And so, it's kind of not really a selfish thing on my part, but I wanted Zach to be able to use those gifts here at church. And there wasn't an avenue at that point. So we started that Generations band that was multi-generational. And just seeing, I think my encouragement to other people in all of this, as I look back and I think, wow, 26 years ago, I was 25. And, there are a lot of 25, 30-year-olds out there that I would encourage you that just because you have little kids doesn't mean you can't serve. Or even if you see something that, something that maybe FBC doesn't have or we're not doing right now, that, to speak up and be a part. Because for us, if we would have waited until we were now, we would have missed a lot of ministry time. Yeah. And so it's just been really fun to see it and to see our kids using their gifts. Zach's the only one that has become a worship leader up front, but Nick was always our behind the scenes server and still is. And Catherine is now on the greeting team down in Shenandoah County, but she loves to sing and she was one of the leaders, and Joel was never, ever up front. I think it was in one musical, and another time Scott looked up and said, "Where's Joel?" It was a VBS Kids Sing. And I said, "He's behind the stage."
Couldn't twist his arm to do it.
And there are some kids that are like that. And I think that's been fun with the way Kids on Worship has been set up, in that there are people who are computer kids and there are people who are up front. And it's like that in the body of Christ too. Yeah. So, yeah. Well,
you are being modest to say that when you're not there, that you're not missed. So there is this level of, okay, what's next? Of, okay, if you're going to be stepping away, first of all, when does that start? And then second of all, what big shoes to fill for people? How is the ministry going to really continue? I know you've got the leadership team, but what does that look like over these next several months and even years to come?
We're still kind of working that out.
Okay.
But June 30th is my last day. So, but I will be meeting with my team actually in August, because some of them are out for the summer. Cole McQuaid, who is someone who's come all the way up through the ministry as a kid, leading beside his mom worship in preschool, and then helping to teach and has been leading worship, but actually directed one of the songs in the musical. But he does a summer camp that he directs. So when he gets back, our team will be meeting and kind of divvying up things. But Charlie Spencer and I are actually in the midst of talking through, what's the actual next steps. But my thought just right now at this very moment is that it would be divided into, different portions. And each of the leaders who have different gifts, like in coming up with scheduling and actually directing,
Mhm.
those kind of things.
Mhm.
The behind the scenes and the upfront
Yeah.
things will be divided up. But we'll see how it actually
Yeah.
pans out.
Well, seeing firsthand, I mean, I've been a part of a lot of different kids ministry events, but the most recent one that we had
Yeah.
outside
Mhm.
and the faces of the kids lighting up to be able to do the show
Mhm.
and the excitement that they had of their outfits and their makeup and
Yeah.
the songs that they were doing and the tension of, oh my goodness, I'm going to be on stage performing in front of these number of people. and
Yeah.
and that just overflows again into the parents helping and
Yes.
serving and in all of your team participating and leading them through that process. It's a neat thing to see. If you haven't been a part of it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
should definitely, I'll encourage
Check it out. Yeah.
what you just said earlier too, of get plugged in
Yeah.
and serve and participate in that, because it's an exciting way to see what God is doing in our body.
Yeah, it is. It's just, fun.
Well, I'll leave us with a psalm passage that I think you guys know very well, but I'll read Psalm 78. Listen, O my people, to my instruction. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I'll open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have known and heard, and our fathers have told us. We will not conceal them from their children, but to tell the next generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wondrous works that he has done. And that is, I think, the sum of your heart and your passion.
Yes.
And now that overflows into the next generation and the older senior adults who still need to hear the word of God.
Yes.
So that's exciting to know that, like, the book of John is being opened to people who have never heard it before because of that. So guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, Karen, over 26 years. Wow.
Thank you.
And it's going to be difficult to see you go, but I know you're still here in the body.
I'll be around.
And still serving in many different ways.
Yeah.
And so your role here is going to be missed, but much thanks. So speaking on behalf of the congregation and all the listeners and people watching, we know that you are going to be exciting to go into new chapters of your life, but kind of the gap that's left behind. I know you're modest, and so there you will be missed. So we appreciate it.
Thank
So
you.
guys, if you have any thoughts or comments of being a part of the podcast in any way, we want to remind you that you can go to the fbcva.life/podcast and see all the resources, all the different show notes you can contribute, give us feedback. Next week, we're going to hear from the Den Hartog family, and want you guys just to know that that's going to be an interesting conversation that you won't want to miss. So as we have continued changes here at FBC amongst the staff, you'll want to listen to what they have to say. So thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Santmiers, again, thanks for being here. And until we chat again, let Christ be the focus of our lives each and every day.